Hi, and welcome to episode 54 of the Tomato Timer. And today, I'm excited to bring you someone you might have heard of if you've been studying for OLA in A-level chemistry because of his YouTube channel. Bilal has been teaching since 2002, and he's also the founder and director for three prominent private educational institutions in Karachi, Pakistan. He has a background in educational entrepreneurship as well as technology besides chemistry, and he's currently leading multiple EdTech projects under his organization, Qadam. His dream is to nurture lifelong learning and ethical leadership in Pakistan's youth. An inspiring mission. Thank you so much for joining us, Bilal.
Thank you for having me.
Bilal, I have to kick it off with
Yep.
something that came out of the team as soon as I shared that you were going to be joining us on an episode. They said that Bilal is the reason we passed A-level chemistry, and I'm sure you've heard a lot in the past like that before. So tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
your YouTube channel, how it all started, where you were at the time.
Uh, the channel started about 3 years ago. So I've been teaching A levels. In fact, not just chemistry. I've taught A level math,
Hmm.
and IGCSE and GCSE chemistry, math, physics. So I've been teaching for a while, and I've been always been fascinated by technology because that's the reason why I actually got into computer science when I was in undergrad. So
Okay.
anytime there's an excuse to use technology in the classroom, I jump on it. First with the projector, interactive boards, all that stuff, iPads in the classroom. So as one of the initiatives that we started off with at Cedar College, the latest startup I had, all the students were given iPads and they were given digital content to view, to work with, to use notes of, and all that. So to facilitate that, I thought, you know what, there has to be an easier way to record class lectures. I mean,
Hmm.
I've seen the MIT Open Courseware being the
Yeah.
pioneers of recording class lectures, and then there were Khan Academy, who's a big inspiration. Salman Khan is like a personal hero from Khan Academy. So I saw his work, and I was using the iPad. Before that, I was using the Wacom tablet, and I started using the iPad, and then until you get technology that helps you do that. And there was a time that we suddenly got apps like Good Notes and Explain Everything, and it became much easier to literally record your iPad. So the
Mm.
so a few years ago, and I realized it was so easy to record. All I just did was record how I deliver lectures in a class, a little more consciously on my iPad while delivering them, hooking myself with a mic, wireless system. I thought, okay, I'll get this out to my own students. So literally, it was actually for my own students who would miss a class, and I thought
Hmm.
they'll get extra help. And then I said if they had friends who want to watch, they'd watch. So initially, it was really just me. So if you watch my earlier videos, I'm cracking jokes in the classroom. Also, I'm picking on
Yeah.
somebody, or so it's all that mixed in because it was just me doing exactly what MIT had done with the open courseware, a little less formal, and just getting it out there. Because I felt that if revolution has to come through technology, then you got to first have consumer behavior changing. So there's nobody in
Agree.
Pakistan using technology to learn. So you could not even think of starting up a sustainable business model on it unless you get behavior to change. So my goal was literally just get some kids to say, "Hey, I learned this on YouTube." And that's a domino effect. And
Yeah.
you could say the inflection point was COVID because by that time, till that time, really nobody else was doing it except for one other person in my circle of teaching colleagues.
Hmm.
And then with COVID, everybody said, "Hey, let's just put up our Zooms online." So at least that started happening. So
Yeah.
now we are the stage that people think, hey, I can just watch a video to learn. And that was the change I was actively going for, just making sure enough kids can use video to learn. And the reason for that is because in the IGCSE and A level world that we are in, and I'm sure you work with also, is
Yeah.
that A level content is a little specialist content. It's very specific, and
Hmm.
there aren't as many teachers to deliver that well. And my goal was that if I'd rather not, I mean, I was getting paid very well from a school. I can teach a few kids and make a lot of money from them, or I can teach a lot of kids, maybe make no money or only small amount of money from each person, but the scale is reached and everybody gets access to high quality instructional content. Because obviously, I'm not kidding myself, I'm not making interactive content. It's instructional and it gets better and better with time and age. But generally, that's how I started off with.
Amazing. I have so many questions, but the first observation I wanted to pick up on was this point you talk about in terms of the ease of technology, because it is true. Even if we look at a couple years ago when we were still messing around with graphics pads and trying to get content up, things like live streaming was such an unheard of concept. I mean, I'm not very old, but I still remember dial-up internet connections where we had to
Yeah.
pull the telephone line out and connect it to our mobile to our computers. And I still remember finding out about YouTube, but YouTube was just an impossible dream. How would we be streaming videos on this on this 256K internet connection, or 128, whatever it was.
Yeah,
So it needed the kind of the maturity of the technological tools and platforms to be
yeah.
able to deliver
I
what's
totally,
happening now. Um,
absolutely.
but
I
what
call
about?
YouTube. I'm sorry to cut you. I mean, just highlighting your point. I actually call the YouTube revolution is the same as equivalent or as important as the Gutenberg printing press revolution.
Mm,
They just made it, I mean, and not just YouTube, the fact that technology made it easier and cheaper to store data, upload data, internet, server space, all of that had to become such a low cost that it's now easier to record than to write it down, you know?
that's true.
And that's what I need to happen. And now I think that's the democracy that we were looking for in terms of figuring out how to communicate expert content out there.
Yeah. And another observation is just the fact that you shared how your videos often kind of get the cracking of the jokes and kind of keep it humane.
Mm, yeah.
We have also been doing through ZNotes live video content on educational kind of subjects, as academic subjects like the A levels and GCSEs. And one thing that I've been really pushing forward for is ensuring that the episode, the content that's delivered is always done with at least two people. It's done with a host and an expert, and the reason for that is that conversational aspect. And I wonder what you think, being in this kind of YouTube education space, the value that comes out of either a live interaction and recording of it, or a um, the presence of more than one person on a video versus one person just writing on a PowerPoint slide and just kind of flicking through the. Have you noticed a difference? Have you tried to the different models out and experienced something different from either?
I haven't actually. It's the first time I'm hearing about that unique idea that you mentioned, that there's a host and an expert, because
Mm,
that looks like that you're recording the interaction, also the or also you are showing the discovery of. So I think
yeah.
as a live recording of a session, that's a brilliant idea. I don't know how you could because in most times when I'm making video content, like a particular 15-minute video, because now when I look at the fact that kids have to learn, the next thing comes to me is that the way they make a payment, most students only make a payment by the time they give us. So I want to make a more efficient video. So yes, humane fun is important, but I also throw in the idea that, okay, I've got to turn a 30-minute content lecture into 15-20 minutes. So what can I do? Remove the r's and the o's. So I actually end up pausing, re-recording parts of it. When you have a conversation going, the beauty of that would be it not cut at all. It's just exactly
Mm,
live. So I would not be able to comment on the effectiveness of it, though it seems like a brilliant idea to try. Somebody who like me who loves experimenting, I'd love to try that. And that never occurred to me. So I will have to go and check out the videos that you talk about and get you
yeah.
feedback on that. And because that looks fascinating, because I understand that from a student who's shy perspective, he sees another host, which might be a student or might not be an expert, discover the same things or the same methods he's discovering
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And that gives people confidence. Okay, look, I'm not that bad. They took
Yeah.
the same path of understanding as I did. That's great. So I think the
And
idea is great, though. Yeah,
I'm really glad to hear it, and it's almost like Inception. But the reason why I talk about this is because even within a podcast, the reason why podcasts are getting the kind of the traction and the visibility is because of this conversation. We're having a conversation, but we also have a
yeah,
third person in the room who's the listener, and although they may not be vocal, they're actually very much part of this conversation that we have. And I think
yeah.
this is a very useful effect when we're delivering educational content, to ensure that the listener or the learner is not simply um, outside this stage that we're on, but instead is actually part of it, is part of the conversation. I want to
Yeah.
understand a little bit more about the transition, or the kind of the co-development, I guess, of the institutions in Karachi. How you mentioned some of the kind of new technological implementations you made in those institutions.
Yeah.
How are they running? How what are the differences in comparison to the other institutions and other kind of schools of around in
Sure.
the area?
Sure. So, I mean, I can give you the names also. It'll help those who know the city that in Karachi, that they can understand and recognize the names. Well, so far they've all been very, very highly successful financial ventures. The reason why I moved on was I was looking for a new challenge. So the first
Hmm.
one was Nixer. They tried a few. Their innovation was not as tech heavy as in, but it was more innovative in the education point of view. So
Mm-hmm.
the students had a choice in which courses and lectures they chose, lecturers they chose, or instructors. There was choice in when to take admission. I mean, there's a whole new change in which students get admitted to our schools now in Pakistan, at least in Karachi. Well, it was a different way. They changed that also. Because of Nixon, a lot of new schools came up. Nixon was first in where the schools was being set up and owned by actual teachers. So then you were, so the people who owned the
Okay.
school were actually people who were teaching in a
Yeah.
classroom. And
Yeah.
that changed everything. So every other school now that's opened up is mainly also has a few, if not more, teachers part of the ownership structure. So that was one change that's sustainable. Next is still a top three school in our country, in our city, actually doing really well. I wanted to do more education, innovation, and technological. So then I set up another school with other friends of mine who are also teachers. That's called Cedar College. It's also doing massively well. So these are top two schools, three schools in the city right now in terms of both quality of students and in terms of the number of admissions and subscriptions and campus and everything. And in that school, I tried to, we tried iPads. Students had iPads for a few years. Uh, and I think it changed because I stepped down from, I was leading the school also, and I stepped down from that role and moved out of the project a couple of years later because I want to focus only on teaching at that time, and I was done that, and I wanted to do something else. So now I'm in the
Yeah.
EdTech space. That's what I want to focus on. But those schools tried innovative approaches, and they're still, because of those initial approaches, they have
Mm-hmm.
stuck to being leaders in the industry so far. I wish they would, keep on innovating. That's the kind of person I am, that I
Yeah.
don't, just because something worked, you don't just live on the success of that. You got to push so that others, like for me, I'm driven by competition. So I want to always be ahead, like thinking about doing what's next, what's and the in the end, the goal is to serve the students more efficiently. The goal is to make it better for them, more efficient for them, because they're spending too much time really studying for these standardized exams, these high stakes exams that there are. And it's actually not very good for the well being, also. I know kids in Karachi in Pakistan end up spending 12 hours a day or 8 hours a day just in classrooms. You got the schools and colleges, and then they also go for afternoon help, evening help with tutors and all that. And that takes up a whole chunk of the day. So they have no
Mm-hmm.
time for even physical well being, like a sport or anything like that. They're like, we don't have time for that. And so that's missing in our society now. I feel
Mm-hmm.
the competitiveness of the exams has taken the fun out of a child's life. So I'm focusing on trying to now, for the next way forward, how can we reduce this time, make it more efficient, save some money, all through technology, so that that's how we take the steps forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions I want to ask, but the thing that kind of draws me immediately is well-being. Um, I remember reading a statistic or some sort of fact many years ago. I can't reference the actual research, but it came across something like the stress and pressures that students at school were now facing at high stakes exams were equivalent to some of the stress levels of people in the army in World War II, or some ridiculously crazy stress levels. And it's really scary to think that these young, uh, especially kind of very metamorphizing young human beings, they're ready for change and they're ready to explore the world, are suddenly being like put through this kind of furnace to kind of get the best possible exam grades, because so many things are dependent on them, right? Whether it's not
Yeah.
just the next school, the next college, but the university, from the university to the next job, to not everything is like, it's so linked up. And I think it's changing, and it's changing for the better. And I'm really excited to see things like um, Google and Microsoft and Apple setting up, universities and pathways for non-university students to actually get into their careers. And so the transition is happening, but at the same time, we're still in a position of this transition. We still need to support the next thousands, millions of students who are going to go through this educational system. So
Yeah.
what do you think? How have you, two parts, I guess. How do you see technology enabling young people and students to be able to get through these high stake exams while maintaining their quality of living and their mental well being? And secondly, um, what happens to the education system in response to this? Do we still stick to this assessment based system? I know they're two distinct questions, but I'd let you Did you
Yeah,
kick off with that?
sure. I love this question. I love both of them actually, because I've been thinking about the same problems actually.
Hmm.
Because as somebody who's gone through it myself, and I'm sure you just recently went through exams before your college, that these are sometimes they don't even need it, because in the end they maybe are just a signaling to a university, take this kid, he's smart. That's it. That's all they're for, really, right?
Hmm.
And we know that soon enough, because right now we can't even blame them, because they're the only way to assess an international student body. Because
Absolutely.
for many countries, the universities really can't judge their internal systems fairly, so they have to rely on these international assessments to get a level playing field. But because of the grade, the upward mobility and security attached to these grades, everybody's running after them. So I think we are in the right. I think you also feel it. Things are changing,
Hmm.
and things are going to change very, very soon, very, very fast, but not fast enough. So I think maybe 5 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road, we might not even have standardized exams, and that would be brilliant. There'll be other ways of assessing student ability, student intelligence, and everything else that we need to. Till that time, so till while schools might get there, and what do we do with how we can lower the anxiety levels right now? So that's what I want to. So I looked at the problems of students. Like, I've realized the same myself, that okay, so what are students are getting stressed about? What they're getting stressed about is that many of them don't have access to high quality teaching content. It's
Hmm.
difficult. It's not everybody has great teachers in school that inspire them. And then even if they do, sometimes they can't access them. They don't be able to go to they can't afford, because it's not like in most countries good education isn't provided by the government. It's not free. So there's
Of
fun.
course.
So the access to high quality education can be really, really scaled by EdTech, because
Hmm.
you know the same high quality lectures that the best of the best in the world give, you know if they can be delivered and recorded and saved for the whole world to watch, why not? That'll make access, so access at a much lower cost, always available. So when these kids are stressed out, these guys are studying in midnight, I mean, at 1 a.m, 12, 11 p.m, they have nobody to help them there. But they'll
Hmm.
have everybody online for all other conversations, but there's nobody to help them academically that late. So
Hmm.
I think just like the service industry and many more tech supports 24/7, I think there's got to be a tech 24/7 educational support network also. So whenever the kids are
Hmm.
studying, they have, so that they are worry free. Most of the problems they have is time and access and worry. I mean, and the fact that they can always ask for help. So you make it easier to ask for help. You make it as easy and free as possible to get expert knowledge on the,
Hmm.
and then somebody tells them this is how it's done. I mean, funny enough, we the kids spend a lot of time in school and classes, so that if you reduce that part, then they actually have time to also
Yeah.
breathe in. They haven't been able to take ownership of their learning, because when you go to a class, when you go to any school, the teacher will say, okay, this is the whole year what we'll study. But this child is no, he's not in ownership of his learning. He has to wait for the teacher to come to school to deliver a content for him to absorb it.
Hmm.
With technology, the child is in charge. He or she can watch, like, binge watch content. They binge watch Netflix, right? So
Yeah, of course.
you can binge watch Khan Academy and
Yeah.
really learn in 3 months a whole year's worth of content.
Hmm.
That's what we need to give these kids, so that they realize that we can do that, so that they have more time for other things in their life, friends, just the air, just some time for them, for their own well-being. So I think reducing their stress by giving them, here, here's everything you need, and you can use it anytime you want to, and there's help also available for you 24/7. That's something that we have to get to, while the whole ecosystem around them figures out a way to reduce the importance of these standardized exams, or replaces
Yeah.
them with other forms of assessment. Till that time, I'm sure there's a way to we could reduce the stress by using technology. Very other industries are already doing it, and I think you'll notice that education for other things outside of standardized exams are on the rise. I mean, you got Udemy going public, you have Skillshare, Creative Life. I mean, they are teaching creativity digitally. If you can do that, you can easily teach math and science digitally. It's
Yeah.
not that difficult,
Yeah.
and high quality also at that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love that. No, and it's I feel like what you're saying is just like it's just bolstering me up, because that's a lot of what we believe and want to achieve through ZNotes as well, of providing high quality educational access. And maybe this is a very kind of like a question that's really interesting for me, and I really want to hear your opinion on it. Um,
Sure.
so your perspective and your experiences have always been of course, you were a student at one point of your life, but now has always, for a long period of time, has been as a teacher, has been as that
Yeah,
mentor, has been as an expert. Um, the kind of the philosophy and the model that ZNotes has taken on is a very student-led approach, and I think there is a marrying of this, and I think that teachers are critical to that mentorship capacity that they bring in. They inspire you, they give you so much, but my kind of my philosophy and what I kind of push forward is always that young people and students themselves can be empowered to do a lot as well. So
absolutely.
where do you see the two pieces fitting in, the teachers and their expertise and instructional content and high quality instructional content, and the second piece, which I am a big proponent of, is peer-to-peer learning, and all coming together under the umbrella of ownership, so that education, so the students are the owners of their educational pathway, that they're the not just the consumers but actually the producers
Mhm.
and proponents of it as well.
So, as far as the first really earlier part, you said you were a student once and then you became a teacher. So, I got to tell you something about myself. The reason why I got into teaching was only because naturally I was helping a lot of my friends with their understanding of schoolwork while I was already in school.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think that hit home, and you just said, how can students? Because I don't believe teachers aren't thought to be title. There isn't a title for a teacher. Teacher is a role, and anybody can take on that role for even a small amount of time.
Mm,
I used to do that
mm,
for my own friends. So when you talk about social learning or learning as a community of students together, they can take on roles of teachers at micro instances. For that moment, you start, because most of the time it's not that instructional content is the only thing they need. Many times they're looking at a high quality video and they don't understand something. At
mhm.
that moment is when, if they are watching content together, like a Facebook watch party or a Netflix watch party, because if you can watch movies together, you can watch content together. So
Yeah.
teachers role should only really honestly be to make high quality instruction, especially for high grades. And students can actually help each other by collectively studying it together, either watching videos together, asking each other where you don't understand something, so that your questions are solved right there and then. And so even online they can make watch parties, so, and also
Mhm.
help each other with motivation. Because I think peer-to-peer learning is a support system. It's more like, hey, let's all make sure we do this by today. Let's like, so it's like a buddy system. It's like
Mm,
it's a mix of, you could say, an unofficial counseling also, so some counseling, some motivation. And
yeah.
so absolutely, I have seen this, and I've seen kids drive other kids by pushing them to watch content, to, because most kids nowadays, they are slowly becoming, you could say, owners of their own learning pathways.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So that it's happening. You could see that in some of these online platforms, and I think
Yeah.
the more social engagement is enabled there, it'll be much more engaging for the
Yeah.
kids. Absolutely. I think if they can really help, they are really in charge. And they're very, by the way, it's very democratic. They'll tell you when something is good or bad. They want, and especially if it's
Absolutely.
online,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's great. We need that. Sorry.
They'll be very, very honest. And
Yeah,
accountability, I think peer-to-peer learning gives a huge amount of accountability to each person. And
absolutely.
that's so critical in ensuring that we kind of follow through in our choices, in our kind of specific assessments and exams. It's so crazy